Hey, 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 are you there, Gracie?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly fine. I guess three times is a charm.
Or 300,
Yeah. Hey,
which is what it really feels like.
it really does. So we experienced a little bit of technical difficulty getting started today, but we wanted to get this episode dropped before the start of December so we can get ready for December show.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we're going to go over today, and that is Oracle's Weird Science and the psychic arms race. So,
That sounds like it's going to be a great show today. We're going to cover a lot of different topics.
I know. Well, it all ties together, which is really fascinating. So,
Yes, it does.
I guess the basic thing we need to cover is ESP is extrasensory. It literally means outside the senses. That would be the five senses of sight, touch, hearing, smell, and taste. ESP is the ability to receive and process information independent of those. So that's where the term the sixth sense was coined, which was pretty
Right.
interesting because the sixth sense, there's really more than one type of extrasensory thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Is what all it covers. So, but we can talk about that later. But
Sure.
anyway, I think that there's a lot of interest about remote viewing, but I wanted to give a little bit of history first because my thing's all about history.
Oh,
So
yes. You love your history.
I do. So actually, the one of the things that again I found interesting this time around was, I really started looking at Project Stargate and like where all of that started with the U.S. government, and was really astounded and felt somewhat ashamed of myself for not realizing this, but the use of psychics has gone back to the dawn of man. And I mean, you have accounts of it with the Roman Empire, the ancient Greeks, even the Native Americans, that everyone was using this. And it wasn't
Yes.
really until, I guess, the witch trials that psychic abilities really became looked down upon and more, I guess, I don't even know how to politically correct say it, of the devil.
Exactly.
A little of the devilish, and people with the psychic abilities kind of went into the closet, and
Well, they had to.
oh yeah, and I mean it became something that people just didn't talk about. And I know even growing up in my family, where we had, which we live in the Bible Belt in the deep
Hmm.
South, and I know that it was kind of whispered my grandmother was witchy because she had
Right.
premonitions, and that was not something we talked about. It just wasn't.
Well, I think you and I've talked about this before. We're all born with those abilities. That is part of us, our innate abilities as humans. And as we get older, kids will say, "I've seen a bunny in the corner." And you're like, "No, you didn't."
Oh yeah.
Or we try to normalize that kind of behavior over time, and we lose it. We lose it because it's not normal. It's not accepted.
And
Um,
the crazy thing is, it is. And
exactly.
the United States government alone has spent millions of dollars. And ultimately, what I took away from my research into Project Stargate is,
Hmm.
well, they proved psychic abilities was strong enough that, and I'm just going to kind of skip forward in our notes because I want to get these right. What basically the U.S. government started research after World War II into the Cold War,
Hmm. Right.
and the CIA and the Department of Defense was involved in the study associated with the magical and supernatural into extrasensory perception. And what their conclusions were so strong that the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, including the Intelligence and Security Command and Development of Readiness Command, the Coast Guard, the Defense Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, DEA, U.S. Customs, the Secret Service, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff were all like, okay, here's some more money. We want to know more. And jumped on board. So what does that say to you? Well, that says to me, obviously, it wasn't just that they proved that psychic powers exist beyond a shadow of a doubt because they were throwing money at it, but they were really, really concerned that it was being used against them by the Russians. I mean,
absolutely.
And I think the Chinese too. But yeah, so it's incredible that, and I'm sorry, I'm going to, because I'm so excited, I have to say this before I forget, but remote viewing is nothing more than some of that ESP. So everyone talks about remote viewing, and I've heard FBI agents talk about it. I've heard police talk about it. I've heard a number of people who, if they got a wind that it was woo related, would not have been as interested or inclined to buy into it. But that is just a name that the CIA came up with because people were uncomfortable saying psychic.
Exactly.
How crazy is that?
It is. And, thinking about our government's interest in ESP and psychic abilities, that goes back a long way. We can look at Nazi Germany and their interest in the occult. And, it was a horrible time in our world history, but they did all kinds of experiments on people to test their psychic ability and to understand things like, do twins have some sort of special ability to allow them to communicate between just the twins? And after the end of World War II, the Russians and the Americans actually split that research, all the documentation for that research. Half of it went to us, half of it went to the Russians. And I really think that really fueled that Cold War desire to learn more about what our abilities could be.
Exactly. And at that point in time, because the Russians were spending a lot of, rubles on the research, and we would find out that they were doing the research, and we were like, oh my gosh, well, we have to be able to protect ourselves. So let's put this money over here and figure it out. And they called it the psychic arms race.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's fascinating. And I think I told you that like the name change of Project Stargate, it was one program, but it went through a number of different, it was like called like the grill flame and gondola and a lot of different things. And all of this information, for those who are interested, has been declassified up until, I think, 95, that the research from spanning from the 70s into 95 is available if anybody wants to read it. And there's some fascinating stuff out there. And it is not woo science. And that's one of the things that like people jokingly refer to it, but it really isn't. There are some really great minds behind this research. And like I said, time and time again, you start finding out that, it's not new.
Exactly.
That was the big takeaway for me, was this isn't new. I think I mentioned the Romans. They had, it's really weird. They basically had this, it's called augury, is the practice of interpreting omens from the observed behavior of birds. And they did that for thousands of years.
Oh, wow. That's really fascinating. I did not know that.
And they did it to determine everything from who should serve in political offices to participating in weddings and to assure that marriages got off to a positive start. So it was used for everything.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It is. But we do put a lot of energy and mysticism into birds, so that maybe where some of that comes from.
Well, I was thinking about the people who bird watch. That I wonder
True.
if that's like a leftover thing that people enjoy. The other thing was the ancient Greeks. They were called sibyls, and that's
Hmm.
what psychics and oracles were known. And they
Hmm.
used oracles to predicting everything from earthquakes to wars, plagues, and other calamities. Which I think we discussed this on the phone,
Hmm.
that King Leonidas, the great Spartan king, was known to have gone to the oracle at Delphi, and that was where he got word about. I think it was the movie The 300,
Yes.
that it even portrays it in that movie. But I mean, that really happened. The kings and queens of Greece used these people, and
Exactly. I mean, they would go consult the oracle just like a president would go consult their Department of Defense.
exactly.
I mean, it was just routine. It was expected.
Hmm. And I think I told you that Napoleon and his wife
Hmm.
Josephine, the French emperor and empress, they were known to have used a psychic. And the lady,
Exactly.
I won't even attempt to butcher her name, but she was around even before them. She made it through the French Revolution, and she thrived during the French Revolution because a lot of the people involved were going to her to see what their fate was. So
Wow.
So yes, it
I
makes you
mean,
wonder. It really makes you wonder why science has taken such an aggressive and hostile attitude towards the supernatural or paranormal.
well, you could think of it this way, and it would be a very controversial way to think of it. Sometimes I wonder if science debunks ESP and other abilities of that nature, almost like almost like a psyop. Like our scientists don't want other countries, other nations, other groups to know how powerful this tool is. So they practice diversion.
Well,
Like, oh no, that doesn't work.
that's interesting because
Yeah.
Hitler, even though they as big into the occult as the Third Reich
Hmm.
was, he came to where he had outlawed the use of astrology and the use of the occult practices for the average person. They could use them, but anybody
Hmm.
that was found to be using them was arrested. And they did
Wow.
that because they felt like it was too powerful a tool for anyone but
Hmm.
them to use.
Exactly. Exactly. That's very fascinating.
Yeah,
That means that they knew the power of our human mind and they wanted to snuff that power.
well, it was all about, power with them. It was crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can even look even further back. I mean, look at Nostradamus. He was a powerful seer, but he had to keep everything very covert. He
Mhm.
was very secretive, and that's why he wrote in those quatrains and how they are almost like a riddle that you have to decipher because he didn't want to be found out.
Well, no, I mean it was
No.
cheesy. That the French lady that she read for Napoleon and Josephine.
Hmm.
There's accounts of him getting that, like, once he got done with her readings, he would get really mad if it didn't go his way. So it was chancy to be
Oh,
honest with
yeah.
these people, especially
Exactly.
then. And especially when you're dealing with egos and stuff. And I think that
Hmm.
I want to say, and I did not really look into it because I didn't want to get too deep into the cult with the Nazis because that's just too big of a topic to tackle.
Oh, it's a huge topic.
But I want to say that Hitler's personal psychic was actually a Jewish person. So that,
Oh.
yeah, that was kind of interesting. Like I said, I thought I'll have to go back and read up on that. But one of my favorites is the Lakota Chief Sitting Bull. Um,
Mm.
he he was a medicine man. He wasn't really a chief, so to speak. Like, he wasn't a war chief, and he did not really take place in the battle with Custer at Custer's Last Stand. I think they call
Hmm.
it the Battle of the Greasy Grass is what the natives call it. but he predicted that they would win. And it was something he had done a Sundance for 24 hours all day, singing and dancing, just him, to have this vision quest. And it said that they would win, and that the vision told him that whatever your people do, don't desecrate the dead, don't do this, don't that. And he told them, don't touch the dead, leave them alone. And the people didn't, and they touched him, and they said that the Great Spirit had come to him and said that if the bodies are desecrated, your people will know 100 years of suffering, or something similar to that. I'm not as astute to that. I think I told you I did a bunch of research on them this summer, but it was fascinating because he saw it, and they knew they were going to have an overwhelming victory against the cavalry, and it just really went their way. But then again, they were chased all the way to Canada, and
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Native Americans have always embraced their spiritual nature and use that to their advantage.
A lot of indigenous people do.
Yes,
and then
yes, they're very accepting.
Yes. I think that indigenous people are more closely aligned with those things, but I know with the Aborigines and even with the Native Americans here, their cultures have been stripped of them, and they have been kind of pushed to be less of, I don't even know how to say it, less of their culture, more of the white man's, and
right.
It's really disheartening. But again, it's a matter of control. But these people, they lived by their spirit. But
exactly. And over time, for Native Americans, for us, I mean, the culture, the government, they have all tamped down these powers. And like I mentioned before, we have psychics that come up fairly often, and they're disproven. They're labeled a fake, a charlatan. I think that really does feed into that.
Well, it does. But let me tell you that when I was researching what the statistics were, because originally the CIA was wanting to be able to train their operatives to be psychic. And that was when they came to that whole thing of, which we've already discussed, is, everyone has the ability, and it's just a matter of training. But they found that people who were born or had developed, I guess it's a difference between being like Mozart and being a pianist at the church. You're talking about, someone who is just totally gifted and someone who can do it. And that was the difference between the psychics who had been psychic for years and the people who they were training, where they could do it. They weren't as good. It wasn't as natural, and it didn't come as easy to them. And that the people who were being trained were actually jealous of the people who were more psychically connected, because they had such a higher success rate. And I mean, I'll say that out of 10 times, the more psychic person was right 8. And the person who wasn't might be right 3. So you could be trained and you're still right, but your average of hit and miss, But we, in my experience, in talking with people who are psychic and going to some of the classes that I've gone to, everybody's got different levels of aptitude. And it's
absolutely. And it's also how the psychic interprets what they see.
That's what I was going to say. It's the validation. So anybody who is having that validation to their abilities are going to be better. And they said that the psychics who had been practicing psychics, that they got even better and more accurate over time and more confident. I mean, it's amazing. So I just think about, my gosh, what would it be like if we encouraged this, and it was something that was, really trusted. But
Exactly.
I even read about like the concept of women being more psychic than men was actually not true. That men are just as psychic. And the paragraph that, oh gosh, it was so interesting. It was talking about it was in regards to a safety thing. It was a book that I've read before. I just kind of reviewed it, and it was talking about that, in general, men are more concerned with whether or not a girl that they like or a boy they like will laugh at them, whereas women are more concerned if a partner that they're interested in will beat them or kill them. And I thought to myself, well, that right there explains why women might be more in tune to their inner intuition, and
Exactly.
when you look at soldiers or firemen and policemen or people who work in law enforcement who are in the line of fire, and you ask them about their intuition or that gut feeling, they have lots of stories to tell. And I think that it's that whole level of being in a situation where you're, afraid that you might be harmed, or that you're, I don't know, more intense. And because women live with that fear, that we're just more in tune to having to pay attention to those kind of cues from our psyche.
Exactly. I read an article, it's been several months ago, but it was talking about that intuition. It is ingrained in us. It's ingrained in our DNA. And from the dawn of man, we've always had that to keep us out of danger, to keep us safe, and keep us away from harm.
If we were rabbits, it would be what told us there was a fox behind us.
Exactly. And we have that, but we have finally entered into an age where we're very comfortable. We have all of our needs met. We're not going to be attacked by a bear in our home. We have lost a lot of those abilities to sense danger. And like you said, women still have a lot of that intuition because we are so much more aware of our surroundings when we have to move about in the world. Well, we keep a lot of that.
I think so. And I think that's why it's, if someone perceived women to be more psychic, that would be wise, because we have to pay attention to those.
Exactly.
And it's just because of that threat, that threat of being, I guess,
harmed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I guess, in the whole other scope, it could be predator prey. Women tend to be prey to a lot more people than men would be generally. And I'm not saying that they're not, because I know a lot of bad things happen to men too. But I think that we're ingrained at an early age to be aware.
Exactly. And our mothers teach us different lessons as women than men are taught as boys. And, would you park next to a van that has no windows? No. No. Would you go out into a parking lot, and if a van with no windows was sitting there right next to your car, would you get into it? No. We understand those dangers.
Well, I think it's fascinating, and I think
it is.
And one of the things that I think people forget is, astrology, psychicness, that all that stuff has been used forever. And we talked earlier, we were going over notes about President Reagan. President Reagan was the U.S. president from 1987 to I have my years wrong. I think it was 81 to 89. But he used astrology to help him make all his big decisions. And that was confirmed by his wife, associates, and the astrologer herself. And I remember being a young child and seeing it on the news or, in a paper that, I can't think of the lady's name, but, he used a psychic. It was very well known at the time, but people don't talk about that.
Exactly. I mean, Nancy Reagan, she used an astrologer for most of her adult life, and they used that astrologer to plan out major events.
Yep.
So I'm looking it up right now, and actually, Nancy Reagan, she talked about her use of astrology in her autobiography, and she would talk to her astrologer about timing of Reagan's public events, public speaking, his comings and goings. She really kept on top of that using her astrologer, which is kind of interesting. I would like to know if the astrologer had any idea or warning about the assassination attempt on Reagan.
I'm curious. That's something we'll have to look up.
Yeah. I think that would be fascinating to know, to see if he was warned.
I wanted to tell you that some of the stuff that I found out about remote viewing, I've told you about that dream class that I went to and how we would do the envelopes, that when they were teaching remote viewing, that's one of the things they do, which for those of you who are not familiar with my delve into the dream class, in 2019, I took a weekend class with a psychic that lives locally where I live. And it was a really interesting group of people. I was in there with like 2 doctors, PhD doctors in the mental health field, and myself and a couple of other people. One was a veterinarian. So, this was for, very well-educated people taking this class with me. And what we learned how to do was to dream as a group. And part of our homework the first night was everybody wrote a question on a piece of paper and sealed it, didn't tell anybody what was on it, and there was no identifying things on the outside of the envelopes. The instructor for the class took them from us, and she fiddled them about. Somebody, pulled one out of them. And so we dreamed on that topic. Again, the envelope is sealed. So the following night or the following day of the class, she asked us to do the same thing. But instead of asking a personal question, she asked that, that we all think of a question that had nothing to do with us. And, just a question, to do with current events or anything. And so we wrote down the question, went home that night, dreamed about, focused before we went to bed to dream on this envelope. And the next morning I woke up and I thought, that was my question. And sure enough, we get to the class and we go through the thing of opening the thing and all, and it was my question. So she asked me to listen to everyone tell their dreams. And I can tell you right now, the question I asked was whether or not medical marijuana would be put on the ballot in the state that I live in the upcoming election, which was this year.
Right.
And so now I know the result. I
Exactly.
know it was very interesting. Everyone dreamed. I had one girl who actually dreamed of a 5-leaf star. She thought it was a star. And it looked, when she was drawing it, I was just sitting there going, oh my gosh, because it looked like one of those little stickers that you see for the leaf. And and there were people who were dreaming about, I dreamed about a woman in red and she was fighting with a man in blue. And, and then somebody was dreaming about tearing down walls. And it was just crazy because it all very much was about the election and the push and all. And sure enough, everybody had the same thing, was that we felt like it was going to be on the ballot and that it would pass, and it did. And so a year later, I can look back and say, wow, I saw how that worked. And in looking at this remote viewing stuff, if that's how it works, again, it's all up to the interpretation, because that's one of the things we did learn in the class was, even when you're dreaming for someone else, you're dreaming for yourself too. So you kind of have to learn what to look for, and how it applies to what you're doing. So it really is all about symbolism and understanding what you see. And, I can see where a remote viewer can be off. And that's what, when you look at, they found a downed Russian plane that they were searching for within 100 miles of where it was. You have the Nazis, and they were using pendulums for dowsing locations, whether it was for, I think they looked for a destroyer that had sunk and found it. It's accurate. There's rumors that the CIA used remote viewers to find, I want to say Saddam Hussein. So it's incredible. And they say that they had a lot of successes, but they had a lot more failures. And speaking of failures, I know you want to talk about Acoustic Kitty.
Acoustic Kitty. Poor kitty.
So for those of you who aren't familiar, Acoustic Kitty was the project where the CIA tried to use animals, such as cats and dogs, to become spies. And I'll let Gracie take it from there.
Okay, well, Acoustic Kitty, like Hadley just mentioned, it was used by the CIA to be an operative, to go into foreign areas, to consulates, to buildings where they might not be able to access. So what they did is took a group of kitties and tried to train cats to fulfill these missions. And part of the process was to outfit the kitty with microphones and a transmitter. And each kitty that was trained and outfitted with all this equipment, it cost about $10 to $20 million for each cat.
They spent millions on this project.
Yes, absolutely. And the reason they started is because they had gotten word that the Russians were doing the same thing. So we always have to one-up the Russians, especially during the Cold War. So, and this is the most horrible story that I think I've ever heard.
It's like Frankenstein Acoustic Kitty.
And it's Frankenstein Kitty. And they take poor Kitty and they have a target. They have two men on a park bench that they wanted to surveil. So they let the kitty go. Kitty crossed the road and got hit by a taxi. And 30 seconds in.
And thus
ended his first mission.
And thus ended Project Acoustic Kitty.
And thus ended Acoustic Kitty.
Yeah, I think about the wisdom behind that and how much I would love to have known the guy who pitched that sale and how he won. Because
I don't know, because anyone who has a cat knows that's not going to work.
Yeah.
I mean,
but poor
the
kitty.
Cat could have easily chased a bird down the street. He could have gotten distracted by 100 different things because it's a cat. Cats are not cooperative. I'm not saying they're not trainable, but they're not as cooperative.
That one
brave kitty. He had a really short mission.
Well, I will say this. I found out a lot of fascinating stuff that I didn't know, and I found out I got some validation for some stuff I did know.
Yes.
But ultimately, it was an interesting thing, and I encourage anyone who has any interest in this to please research it, leave your comments for us, and let us know what you think. And I'm just interested to hear what everyone's got going on with this. And I think that ultimately what I walked away from it with is, it validated that it does not take a special talent or rare gift to be psychic, that we all have the ability, and it's a matter of just believing in yourself, number one, trust in that gut instinct. And really just kind of getting some validation when you're trying things.
Exactly. And what I've taken away from all this is these abilities are more valued than our culture wants us to think they are.
Yes, yes. And especially in the scientific community, like I said, you would be surprised. You hear about the people who consider it woo science, but you don't hear about the great doctors. I mean, because they have Duke University has a program, and it's just like I said, it's fascinating. We were going to keep this short today, so I'm not going to get long winded about it. But I think that it's spooky and strange, but it's totally true and real. And whether you believe us or not, that's up to you. But I know that it inspires some great ideas on my part as to where to take a journey for my mind. But
exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, we could spend 2 hours on just one part of this.
Oh, I know. I could go back. It's fascinating stuff.
I mean, I could spend 2 hours on how the Nazis used this and how our government used it. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to find out.
There is, and I will tell anyone, please, whenever you're researching anything, be sure to get 2 or 3 different insights into something, because you'll be surprised at what else you find out. Like I said, I walked into this not really realizing that the government had been doing this a lot longer than I thought. I mean, I found out where Harry Houdini was the world famous magician, I think in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He was actually spying. He worked with Scotland Yard to do some spying when he was overseas, and they use magicians and they use psychics, and I mean, it goes way back. It's a lot deeper than Project Stargate.
Yes, I'd heard that. I think that would be another 2 hours to unpack. How our government used civilian assets to do this kind of work.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it just goes into so many different. I mean, I haven't even looked at the psychedelic aspect of it, and there's that whole MK Ultra that the CIA
MK Ultra.
Yes,
exactly.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's where the CIA basically drugged American citizens in lower income, without their consent, in lower income type areas. They looked to brothels, prostitutes, johns, and they would sit and watch these people. And
I was reading something about MK Ultra before the show, and one of the reasons that the government gave about why they used prostitutes, they were actually looking for prostitutes that they could train as spies that had that ability to.
It goes into that Red Sparrow thing.
Yes, yes.
Well, and I know my senior thesis was about the Gestapo and the SS, and one of the things that was their use of brothels as a way to get information. And that's so historically prostitutes are a good sell for getting information out of men.
Well, so with MK Ultra, you had a bunch of men that were dosed with LSD without their knowledge or consent, and they wanted to see that interaction between them and the prostitute to see what the prostitute could get out of them.
Yes, and that also went into whether or not how it could be used effectively for torture.
Exactly.
And gathering intel, and there's ties. There MK Ultra ties into Charles Manson.
Yes.
And also the
Who
JFK assassination.
Yes. Yes.
It's everywhere, and like I said, you go down a rabbit hole with some of this stuff, and you don't know where you're going to end up. It's fascinating stuff, people.
Exactly. So there's a lot to discover out there.
There is.
Our government's been really busy.
And it's not just them. I mean, it's not just the American government that does it. It's
all governments
everywhere. So
yes, all of them.
But
it'd be fascinating to know more about maybe what other governments did, like modern governments besides the Americans or the Russians.
I'm really curious about the Russians. I really am. Mainly because, after World War II, they had all that information, and then Stalin was in charge, and he just had nothing kept him from doing what he wanted to do. He was
right.
Pretty intense with his dictatorship, and
exactly.
I would love to find out more about it. Like I said, it's just a matter of finding some Russian stuff that. Not only can I read, but it's reliable. I haven't been down that bunny hole. I've been busy doing other things because, as some of y'all know, my editor, Miss Gracie, has given me back the manuscript, and the book will be released hopefully soon. So I've got to dress her up and get it formatted, and hopefully we'll
dress her up and take her out.
Yep, put her in her little prom dress and send her out. But no, she should be released. Hopefully, I'm working on cover art now with a couple of people, and I will hopefully have something together soon. So hopefully by the end of the month, y'all will be able to get a free copy of Tapestry of Worlds, and I look forward to seeing what you think about that. But
I am so excited.
Then, me too. Before then, we do have our next show, which we're planning on coinciding with the Grand Conjunction.
Yes, the winter solstice.
Yes.
We've got some major astrology and some different planetary alignments that are coming up on the solstice, and another solar eclipse all on the same day.
Well, there's a lunar eclipse like Monday or Tuesday this week, isn't there?
Yes, I think so. There's just so many.
All the stuff's happening.
So much. I can't keep up with it.
All the stuff, all the crazy is going to be coming out of the woodwork. So
exactly.
If you work in healthcare or for law enforcement, please take care. We love you, and we are thinking about you.
Exactly. And 2020 is not over yet. We still have to get through the winter solstice and see what comes out from the other side. And just to let everybody know what we're talking about, on December 21st, 2020, we will have a grand alignment of, what was it, Jupiter?
And Saturn.
Saturn and Pluto. Is it Pluto or was it another? I cannot remember. But regardless, it has not been seen for thousands of years.
2,000 years. It has not been seen for 2,000 years. So
exactly. And what makes this grand alignment so special is we're moving out of the age of Capricorn into the age of Aquarius. So the alignment will actually happen in Aquarius instead of Capricorn.
Which always makes me sing that song.
You have to sing that song when you talk about the age of Aquarius. If you don't...
Yeah, so
it's like not singing Bohemian Rhapsody if it comes on the radio. You have to sing it.
I actually was talking with someone the other day, and we were talking about the Great Conjunction and all, and I was like, yeah, because just so y'all know, one of the things that's going to be really super cool is that Jupiter and Saturn will look like twins. They're going to look conjoined.
Yes.
So that's going to be amazing to see. And so I'm telling my friend all about it, and she goes, I can't help but think about that scene at the end of the 40-Year-Old Virgin. And now I can't stop thinking of that every time I think of the Great Conjunction.
Oh, now I've got it in my head. Thank you.
Singing the song. Yep, singing the song. Seeing Paul Rudd, all his little friends.
Yes.
I love Paul Rudd, so.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so that's it.
Yeah, it's going to be great next month. I'm excited to really dive into that and see what we can find out.
Exactly. So, anyway, I'm excited for you guys. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I'm excited for see what you think about this. So, again, like, share, subscribe, do all those great things. Once we get 100 subscribers, which right now we have 14, which I'm very proud of, But once we get 100 subscribers, we can save the Wyrd Realities name. So please help us get those subscriptions so we can save the name, because who likes to look at the gobbledygook of our URL at current? But anyway, this is Hadley signing off, and I will see y'all in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Hadley. And this is Gracie signing off. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.